Hello, this is Thomas Sheltra, and today we're going to be unpacking Vermont Civics standards. So this is the list of things that I'm going to be covering throughout my presentation. So Vermont Social Studies Standards goes by something called C3 under Global Citizenship for College, Career, and Civic Life, and the Framework for Social Studies State Standards. This will include history, sociology, geography, economics, financial literacy, and then civics. So it's kind of all-encompassing into what social studies is as far as what students need to know by the time they graduate. So for 12th grade social studies, and specifically civics, this category for civics with civic and political institutions asks students by the time they finish 12th grade, explain how the U.S. Constitution establishes a system of government that has powers, responsibilities, and limits that have changed over time and that are still contested. So here we have the skills, so explain. And here I really like the fact that it's quite ambiguous and vague because I think it leaves a lot of flexibility for students, specifically when I ask them to do journaling exercises, infographics, and then when we get on to Model Congress. And then the concepts of system, powers, responsibility, and limits. So the types of skills, both in civics and 21st century skills, and a lot of these cross over, which I think is really great. So civic skills, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, problem solving, and reflective learners. Next, we go into some of the cross-curricular ideas that I have for what they could do for projects. So for art, when they make an infographic on the Bill of Rights, they can work with an art teacher. For English, working with an English teacher when they need help creating a law and learning how to write the certain style. For science, perhaps with a project-based learning, if they wanted to write something like a climate change law. And if you want to pay for your law, when we do Model Congress, they can work with a math teacher to kind of figure out some of those financial literacy aspects, which would also cover the standards for social studies here in Vermont. 21st century skills, again, some of these cross over. So digital literacy, learning how to do research, information technology, so learning how to get those keywords and phrases, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and collaboration. So projects and activities. So these are built with in-class and online classroom experiences kept in mind. Of course, they could be modified depending on the types of students you have. If you have primarily ELL learners, or if you have students who are on a 504 or IEP plan. In my classroom environment, there are no ELL students. However, the gap in reading and writing comprehension levels between high achievers and low performers is quite wide. So I would be using a lot of accommodations and modifications in my teaching and in my assessments for projects and activities to try and bridge that gap. So the very first sort of activities that I have are an entrance ticket on quizzes to try and gauge the types of things that my students already understand with prior knowledge for civics, history, government, and then a journaling exercise with the prompt of what is freedom and what does it mean to be free? Because I think it is really going to get into students' critical thinking and analytical thinking skills, get into a great discussion about this, and then kind of like check for understanding to see where I'm going to take these students, and then also kind of how fast. Once we get a grasp on vocabulary and working in groups with vocabulary, we can then go into a vocabulary Jeopardy game. Again, this is going to show how well students have kind of mastered the vocabulary words and the concepts that we're going to have to be learning in order to get to the Model Congress. Then an infographic describing the Bill of Rights. Students will choose an amendment to the Constitution in the first 10. That's called the Bill of Rights. And then those students can create an infographic that describes what the amendment is, what it's supposed to mean, and then sort of in contemporary terms, whether the amendment is something that should be changed or not. Then we go into an Civics branches of power game, and then hopefully the final part of the unit would be a summative model Congress. So for formative assessments, I'm going to be doing quizzes, journaling, and then the vocabulary Jeopardy. And for summative is going to be the Model Congress, and this could be incorporated into a larger PBL. But I'll be using research and writing rubrics, oral presentation rubrics, and then also throughout the process, be doing self and peer assessment rubrics during and after the project. So modifications, accommodations, and differentiation. So for groupings, a lot of them are going to be heterogeneous just because I want to have low-performing students work with high-achieving students. ELLs, so giving them different speech-to-text or dictionary softwares, or the use of language apps for students on 504 IEP plans, and a lot of handouts prior to class. For differentiated learning, varied groupings, more audio-visual. And then for in-class online, so these, again, projects were built with both in mind, but depending on the type of students I have, the understanding of the content, I'm going to modify based on those needs, depending on the groupings that I have and the online or class that I have. I would like to thank you for your service, and thank you for watching.